Well, now I've gone and done it. I messed up my order for the NA rotating banner, and now we're kind of stuck just doing whatever servants are really left. I mean, I liked having it going on where it was like, oh, this servant's going on, right up, bada boom, bada bing. The video is up so you can check whether or not you want to summon for the servant or not. But for some weird reason, I thought Kiara was going to be on Raid Up today, or, you know, today when I'm recording this video, not today when this video is going to be live. But it turns out Gilgamesh is actually out right now, and I saw that this morning and I was like, huh. Well, I guess I'll just try to stay on the ball by doing the Summer BB video then, huh? Because while I could do Scott Hawk, who should be out next right after Gilgamesh, I've already done a video on Scott Hawk like a month ago, and I'm really just going to save her video for when she gets her buffs and she becomes a lot better around the time when we get the bunny outfit as well. So instead, let's just go ahead and talk about Summer BB because it's been a fat minute since we've just revisited this absolute bundle of joy that's always trying to game end us. But for some reason, it's still just immensely popular. Gee, I could not figure out why she's still so popular. It really takes a true Sherlock Holmes detective to figure that one out. But anyway, enough being mean to BB. She's actually a really solid unit if you want to do big 5-head strategies, because she can kind of be her own DPS servant. If you look at her first 2 skills on her NP, like, she functions pretty strong in that avenue, because I mean, her NP damage isn't the greatest, but it is passable, and she kind of makes up for it with her first skill. But really, the main draw to summoning Summer BB is 1, she's insanely popular, and 2, her third skill. Her third skill allows a lot of just absolute 5-head nonsense that you should not be able to do in this game. For instance, did you know that the final fight of Lost Belt 4 is actually a farming node? See, people don't actually really know this. They think like, oh man, I gotta fight this tree and I gotta fight Ash Vitamin and it's gonna be a real hard slugfest. But in all reality, if you have Parvati and you have Summer BB who can guarantee Parvati's face cards with their third skill, it's funny how a lot of those fights turn into farming nodes, because Summer BB has one of those skills that kind of changes the way that you play the game, and we'll talk about that more as we get into this video. Now, if you have not already, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Your boy's on that daily FGO content grind, and every little bit of support definitely helps out the channel. If you want to go that extra mile in showing your support for the channel and still supporting it in a free way, I am affiliated by all means with LD Emulator and Loot Cakes. Both are linked down in the description down below. And again, the main thing I always get with emulators is, will my account get banned? Absolutely not. FGO is really nice when it comes to emulators. That's why I'm absolutely fine with being affiliated with them, because you can actually get some use out of it. And if you've ever been like, hey, I want a secondary account or I want a JP account, just slap that on your computer and you're good to go. Now, do keep in mind that LD Emulator is an Android emulator, and so if you're playing on an iOS device, you need to be very careful about transferring when you still have Saint Quartz, because they will get deleted from going to a different OS type. Although the weird thing is that I've seen some comments from people being like, actually, nah, my Saint Quartz didn't get deleted when I went from a different OS type. So I don't know if FGO changed their policy on that, but I just wouldn't do it to be safe. I would only transfer over to a different OS type if you have absolutely no Saint Quartz in your account. I mean, fragments are fine, just no Saint Quartz, right? I don't want anybody to lose like their hard-earned Saint Quartz, right? Especially if you're a free-to-play player in this year of FGO with all the hype banners that are coming out. So just don't do it, all right? Just be smart. And then finally, if you want bonus content, like you're just absolutely starving for more content, you can click that join button to become a channel member. There's a few channel member exclusive videos up over there, and I stream every weekday on Twitch. And if I'm not going to stream on a specific weekday, I'll usually announce it in my Discord. So if you're ever like, man, where is the stream? Just go to the Discord, check the announcement tabs, and I've probably been like, hey man, class was really busy today. Don't really feel like streaming because I got to get this homework done. So just all those little resources for you guys in the comments down below. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and start off by looking at Summer BB's hits, which I'm not going to lie to you guys, I almost wish that Summer BB was an art servant, because her arts cards here are actually really good with her really solid base NP gen of 0.61% and 3 hits on 2 of those arts cards. And because, spoiler alert, she does kind of function as a crit servant, namely just because of her first skill. I would have really liked it if she was an art servant, because then she could just like refund her NP, or you could have like arch chains where she fires her NP, then does double arts crits and just refunds her NP and just kind of keeps looping along. Although I guess the issue with that is that her NP hits are kind of low at 3 hits, so maybe that wouldn't work out, but I just kind of feel like she'd be really solid as an art servant, especially because the first BB was an art servant as well. But you know, we gotta settle with her just being a buster servant. That also being said, she does have a pretty strong quick card that has 4 hits on it and has 14.8% star gen. And even though she's not a foreigner, because she has some weird story-based foreigner nonsense, she does have the foreigner passive skill that gives her 2 stars every turn. So do keep in mind that her star gen is going to be slightly better than what you're seeing on screen right now. Also, because her Buster cards hits are so high at 5 hits each, you can actually kind of make those some star genning cards if you want to put a little bit of star gen into her. Like say you're using her with Merlin or something, and Merlin's second skill is up. Those Buster cards are actually going to drop a fair bit of stars just because the hits are very high on them. Unfortunately, one of the cards that doesn't have the highest hits is the extra attack at 4 hits. If you don't know why this is a big deal, the extra attack is a composite card that gens stars, NP, and does big boy damage. And 5 is the gold standard to make your Brave Chains hit different. 4 is about average, nothing wrong with 4, but we want to see 5. I want to see that gold standard, if not higher. Give us the 9-hit extra attack, DW. I'm tired of waiting. If you were going to give it to somebody, give it to BB because she is the rule breaker. If you haven't played CCC, that's basically BB's whole thing is breaking rules. So give her the 9-hit extra attack, all right? I'm not settling for anything less. But anyway, memes aside, her hits are absolutely fine. Just focus on getting crits on those arts cards because her arts cards are supremely built to doing crits to refund a massive amount of her NP. But if for whatever reason you're missing out on getting some crits, her skills do have you covered. Now, starting off with skill 1, this is just a very generic, very powerful skill. It is giving her 50% crit damage for 3 turns and decent star weight for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. This is essentially Jolter's first skill as well. So if anybody has used Jolter, this is just a very solid overall crit damage skill because you're getting what is essentially Waver's crit damage buff alongside crit star weight as well, which is pretty important because keep in mind that her natural star weight as a Moon Cancer is really not all that high. It's a little average, but not as good as it could be. So this is definitely essential for making her face cards look a little bit better and making sure that she actually gets the stars. And keep in mind, this is kind of a big deal to make sure you're doing this decent crit damage because as I said earlier, her NP damage really isn't all that impressive. Like, it's fine, it's nothing super horrendous, but it's not the best in the world ever. So having this crit damage to kind of supplement her NP damage definitely makes up for a lot. But really, other than that, nothing too exceptional going on with this skill. The second skill is kind of where all the magic happens if you want to use her as her own DPS, because she is giving herself so many different random effects on this skill that are all just really good to making her a decent DPS servant. First and foremost, she gives herself a 50% NP battery, which is absolutely insane in helping her stay relevant, because if you did not know, if you are an AoE Buster Servant or a single target Buster Servant with a 50% battery, you are basically prime and locked and loaded to be very good when it comes to the Koyanskaya meta, because Koyanskaya absolutely loves Buster Servants that have a 50% battery, so she can make them loop their NP 3 times in a row. So BB having that means she's going to be really good when the Koyanskaya meta comes around. If you don't have anybody else, BB is going to be a pretty decent option to go with because she is an extra class servant, so you can basically bring her wherever you want. Just know that she's not really going to be getting type advantage anywhere, but it does at least give her some viability in that meta when it comes to farming, and a 50% battery is just good overall because it gives you really good synergy with a lot of the good 50% starting charge CEs. Namely, there are quite a few for Buster. I mean, you have like the Martha and the Jolter one just off the top of my head. There is the Ishtar one from, I believe it's the Ereshkigal Christmas event where we got Santa Altera, but they really never fail to just keep putting out good 50% starting charge Buster CEs. I mean, there's also one that's free to play that has Consort U on it as well. So there's just a lot of very good 50% Buster CEs. So having synergy with that is very good. A 3k heal also comes with the skill, which isn't the biggest deal, but it does help keep her alive. So it's not nothing, it's just not super exceptional, but it is there. Like, it's not like I can't mention it, but it's not like it's the craziest thing in the world. I mean, it's decent, I suppose, not much to say there. She gets a 20% Buster buff for 3 turns, which, look, I understand because they also gave her a 50% NP damage buff for 3 turns, that they kind of had to make the Buster buff a little low, because if you don't know, different buff types do not add into each other, they're multiplicative. Meaning that 20% Buster buff is multiplying into that 50% NP damage buff. So maybe they tested her out with 30% Buster performance, and they were like, this is just way too strong for what we're trying to go for. But they definitely do need to buff that up in the future, because that Buster performance is affecting her ability to do really well with Buster crits as a Buster Servant. And I mean, she's got the good crit damage, she just needs a bit better of a Buster skill. And it literally is just as simple as giving her like an extra 10% to the buster, because I mean, I'm not going to complain about the 50% NP damage for 3 turns. That's absolutely crazy. And you know how I was just kind of talking about Koyanskaya meta, you know, buster servants? Well, there's another certain ferryman that really likes it when people have big NP damage buffs. And I'm sure he and BB would get along pretty well with that 50% NP damage buff. Then finally, she has like the really annoying Okita alter effect where she gives herself 1 hit of evasion for 3 turns, so at the very least you can neg an NP, I guess, which is really important to her survivability, but we all know that it's really annoying when these characters only have that 1 hit of evasion, you know, just be like, give me the turn, or just give me 2 hits. The 2 hits makes a world of a difference. And so while it does seem kind of weird to say this, I kind of do hope they buff this skill in the future to really just give it like the 10% extra buster performance and the extra hit of evasion. And you know what, while we're at it, just make it a 4k heal as well. Why not? Just make it an even better heal. But then finally we have our third skill. This is actually the main draw to using Summer BB, because what it does is it locks your set of command cards for 3 turns. And if you don't know what that means, essentially you have 15 cards between the 3 servants that you have on the field. Each servant has a deck of 5 cards. You know, for BB, as we saw earlier, her deck of cards is 1 quick card, 2 arts cards, and 2 buster cards. If you have someone like Merlin, his deck of cards is 3 arts cards, a buster card, and a quick card. And essentially, every turn you are drawn 5 of those cards, and once you use one of those cards, they go out of rotation until all 15 cards have been presented, and then it reshuffles them again. What BB allows you to do is get your 5 cards, and if you like the 5 cards you've been dealt, you can lock them in place for 3 turns, and that's why it allows really disgusting combos. In the example I gave earlier with Parvati, you can turn that final fight into a farming node, because if you can get Parvati's quick cards and just guarantee that you can quick chain every single turn, she not only guarantees to just kill through their break bars, but she actually guarantees to refund her NP as well. And it can make a lot of the fights in the game really trivial if you kind of know what you're doing with Summer BB. If you know exactly what you want to do with her, she gets exceptionally good. She's one of those servants that scales higher depending on the skill level of the user, which is why I'm a really big fan of Summer BB, because it's one of those servants that newer fans can properly enjoy, because you have like a very simple AoE buster servant that does crit damage, but as you become a more veteran player, you're like, let me start experimenting with the third skill and seeing what kind of cracked combos I can do, and how I can just utterly decimate the opposing party. So I really like that aspect of the servant, and then it also comes with a neat little effect that she also drops 10 stars every turn for 3 turns, which can be really good if like BB is your last person standing, because if you're the last man standing, locking your 5 cards that you're already going to be getting every turn anyway doesn't really do you anything, so it at least has a bonus effect if she's the only one there. And it is also good in situations like I just mentioned where you want to get crits on Parvati's cards, or even just other team comps that you're doing. Say you're trying to do like a 3-turn burn with someone like Mori or something, and you're like, man, I really need to make sure that Mori's getting those crits. Well, here's an extra 10 stars every turn, well really 12 stars because of her passive skill. But that little bit of extra star income every turn can really be nice to supplement the natural star gen that your team is doing, and it just makes it a very powerful skill overall. Unfortunately, when we look at her NP, I don't really think her NP is all that impressive, but at the same time, I kind of appreciate it for what it is. Essentially what it is it's an AoE NP drain for the entire enemy party, and the overcharge effect is a 10 to 50% chance to further reduce their NP gauge by 1. So I get what they're trying to do, because with art servants you would never see something like this because it's way too strong, because art servants can spam their NP, and so when they have effects like this you can essentially keep the enemy suppressed unless they have some break bar mechanic where they automatically charge their NP. But because BB is a buster servant and in theory shouldn't be able to spam her NP as much, they tried to give her a double reduction of the enemy NP, so that way it's like, okay, well, say you can only get your NP every 3 turns, well, every time you fire your NP, you lower it by 2 anyway. And so that kind of fixes the problem, but the issue is that most of the time you're probably only going to be at overcharge 1, potentially overcharge 3 if you're using her with characters like Himiko and Morgan that do give the overcharge setup as well. But even then, you're only reaching a 30% chance, and I mean, even if you reach max overcharge 5, it's still only a coin flip to reduce their NP gauge by another 1. And I just wish maybe there was something else to this NP. In fact, if they don't want to buff the second skill, they can actually do what they've been doing for some other servants where they put the small buster buff in their skills and they put the rest of the buster buff on the NP, so they could probably buff up her NP, give it the higher NP damage scaling, and then also say, and then before the NP even fires, she gets a 30% buster buff for one turn, so then BB could actually become a juggernaut of dealing damage, because then she'll have a buster mana burst the turn she fires her NP and a 50% NP damage buff. God forbid you throw Ferryman in the mix and you could have an absolutely disgusting turn with BB. And even then I don't think it would be too broken because of, well, what Ferryman does with his third skill. He kind of shuts down your servant afterwards. But I do think the NP could probably use the most work out of everything here on BB. And I do think it is just as simple as slapping on like a 30% buster buff that procs first, and then maybe just upgrading the drain chance on the overcharge, like maybe just make it 50 to 100% depending on overcharge. I think that would greatly help her out a lot. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you guys think of Summer BB? I'm pretty high on this servant. I think she is really good because, you know, I have been playing the game for a while, and there's a lot of really just fun 5-head strategies you can pull off with the servant. But I also understand that some people just want to use her as an AoE buster servant, or they also just want something nice to look at. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, late guys.